look, like I said, last time we were speaking about the sustainable form, and the thing that we kind of alluded to is that it's not sustainable if we do get the injuries. The injuries have happened, probably to a much bigger scale than we all could have hoped or imagined. But Sonny, how concerning after those injuries was that Wolves performance?
I said on my own channel, I compared it to Conte-esque ball. It was probably the worst we played due to the players that we had to offer. You know, your Dyers, your Højbjergs, your Ben Davis of this world. It's just a shame. We all knew that this squad was, threadbare. We knew that the starting 11 was strong. But once you take out, we know Maddison has got ankle injuries, and it would be a possibility. And same with Bassoum's got injury issues in his history. But that's the thing. You have to prepare for these things. And then I've seen a lot of the fan base now reflecting, saying, did we do enough in the summer? Now we've got to do it all in January. We're being linked to players under the sun today again. So, yeah, it just is a shame. But obviously, I hope that most of the fan base still backs the manager because he's, it's still some of the best football we've seen in God knows how long since before, the Poch days probably. So, yeah, got to remain positive, I think, personally. But that game was quite harrowing in stages.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. I mean, do you liken it to Conte ball, Barnaby, from what you saw on the weekend?
I think people are very quick to fly off the handle on these things, to be totally honest. It's like Sonny said, we all know that we had injuries and suspensions. And to be honest, I know people are very quick to blame the, Dyer, Højbjerg, Davis triumvirate for these things. Oh, they're, Jose's players or Conte's players, or even from before that, they're not good enough, etc., etc. I don't look at a lot of clubs in the Premier League and see better squad players than them. Take away Man City, take away the fact that Chelsea have bought all the young talent across Europe. And in reality, I think in terms of squad players, they are more than good enough. It was just a difficult performance. Manchester City went to Wolves and won. Newcastle drew with Wolves. It's not an easy place to go. We nearly won. We were 7 minutes away from winning. And I think personally, the reason we lost that game is because we are playing Ange ball now. And he is 100% on taking free kicks quickly, playing the ball short, trying to finish a game in an attacking way rather than desperately hold on as our default position has been in the past. And the reality is we are going to have to take the rough with the smooth on this. We're going to lose some games that we are nearly going to win, but I think over and above everything else, we will win more games as a result of playing on the front foot than we would have done by camping on our 6-yard box, as we did enough under Jose and Conte and Nuno, and he is trying to teach us how to do it. So, yeah, I agree with Sonny. It was a tough watch at times, and obviously a difficult ending. But I think a bit of realism needed.
In terms of those concerns, though, like a player who I wanted to highlight who maybe hasn't been as good before the sending off since after is Yves Bissouma. In my opinion, he put in a pretty worrying display at Molineux. Is that just a blip, or is this something to be concerned about, Barnaby?
I think it's more likely that either he's playing with a bit of a knock, or that opposition teams are kind of realizing that he's the absolute key to our formation, and especially in a game. And our style, and especially in a game like that where we weren't blessed with our usual kind of midfield options and Destiny on the left to give him more options in the central midfield when we're playing with the ball. I think once you kind of take Bissouma out of the game, then we were left passing the ball to Emerson Royale in central midfield, and that's always going to go backwards and sideways, similar to Højbjerg in a way. Like I said, I think, these players are good enough squad players, but that's not to say that I think they are the players that Ange Postecoglou would buy if he was, across it now. So they're players who will be phased out. But yeah, we were left a little bit one-dimensional in central midfield as a result of those injuries and suspensions. And as you mentioned with, or Sonny mentioned with Madders' ankles, like the reality is he was doing a lot of the lifting for us this season in terms of when we were struggling to get the ball out of defense in the way that Ange wants us to do it. Madders would come incredibly deep, get on the ball, be brave, and kind of unlock that key for us. So,
Sim, we spoke in the summer, didn't we, about at the end of the summer window about we didn't do enough in the summer. We were happy with the caliber of player coming through the door, but we knew, everyone knew that a couple of injuries and we've really sold ourselves short. Is that really coming to the fore now?
Look, it's only been 2 games, but definitely on the basis of when we have had to use these players, you only have to look back at the Fulham game as well. In the Carabao Cup, we made a lot of changes and we saw very similar results. So I'm looking at we can only go what we're seeing, and what we're judging on what we're seeing whenever the fringe players have to start games. Apart from obviously Højbjerg started the Fulham game, and that was fine because if he was going to much more settled 11 and just one change. And obviously I think Højbjerg is a good player anyway, so that's okay. But when we made so many changes with so many of the fringe players coming in, I think it's always going to be difficult to get to immediately start playing at the level that our first 11 was playing at. Our first 11, not only was it very settled, but I think each position has the profile that Postecoglou was looking for, but by and large. Maybe the wingers is the only position, but I think our first 11 throughout the season was very settled. And was really getting to grips with how Ange wants to play. And all of a sudden, we lose 5 starters in one game. And it's no surprise we look disjointed against that Wolves side. And I think a big part of it is having a lot of the fringe players on of maybe what we hope. I think a lot of them are basically not that great when it comes to playing the kind of football Postecoglou wants to play, and then maybe his style of play. But I think as well, another problem is just too many of them in at the same time. I think if you had one of Dyer or Davis in, it wouldn't be such a problem. But having both of them maybe is. If you had, let's say, same having Højbjerg there. So, but the thing is with Ange, you got to remember, start of the season. If you look at the starting 11 at the first game of the season, we had Richarlison up front, we had Ollie Skip in midfield, we have Emerson Royale at right back, and even though we got a draw that day, he decided to change it up in the next game, and he thought he would go in a different direction because he thinks other players are probably more suited to how he wants to play. And even after a whole pre-season, looking at the players, that's how he decided to start the first game of the season, and then he changed it pretty quickly. So he's probably looking at that Wolves game, and it was very disjointed and it was a poor performance. And it was worrying considering the fixtures we have coming up, very difficult fixtures we have coming up. Villa at home, Man City away, then West Ham, then Newcastle. These are tough games. And so going into those games off the back of a disjointed, poor display is worrying. But I do back Ange Postecoglou to look at solutions in the squad that he has and change it up if he can find players who he thinks maybe could suit the system a bit more, like bringing a Lo Celso, who may be a bit more technical, have a bit more technical ability, a bit more attacking vision, which I feel like we lacked a bit, especially midfield area. Maybe change up the centre back position if need be. Albeit I thought Ben Davies had a brilliant game, maybe Dyer less so, but maybe change that position. Maybe give Ashley Phillips a go. Maybe change that up if he thinks that's a better profile. I think what I'm trying to say is Ange has shown himself to be able to find solutions to problems which present themselves. And I think that Wolves' performance did definitely present a problem. I don't think he can look at that game and say, we just go again with the same 11. I think he has to change it up based on what he saw. But I back Ange Postecoglou. I think there are definitely options in the squad. We have Bentancur, we have Lo Celso. There are options there where he can change it to look for solutions, to find the problems of why we look so disjointed. And I'm not so... Maybe the next few games it's a bit worrying because we've got very tough games, but I do believe he can get us, even with the injuries we have, he can get us back to a situation where we're playing good football again. I don't think we're going to see this football that we saw against Wolves for the next 5 weeks. I really don't believe that.
I really hope so, because it'll be a hard 5 weeks if it is. But there was some comments from Brennan Johnson after the game against Wolves, and he said, we almost went too safe. We all went into safety mode where we couldn't see, where we could see we'd get out with 3 points. We can't be playing like that, which he's talking about conservatively. We'll look back at it and try be more aggressive in pressing, positional and playing forward, which is really where we've built our hallmark of our team this season, in doing everything that we didn't do against Wolves. And with those comments about Brennan Johnson, why do you think the team reverted into those kind of situations, Sonny?
Well, I'll be honest, I watched before the game, Ange Postecoglou did an interview with Rio Ferdinand, and he highlighted a moment from the Shakhtar game in pre-season where I think we were 1-0 up, 43 minutes on the clock. And there's still a lot of that in the squad, where these players obviously have been coached by 3 more defensive style coaches in Nuno, Conte and Mourinho. And usually when push comes to shove, they like to maybe, drop off a little bit, looking at the clock, looking at the score. And probably when we're sitting at 1-0 And, you know, we went 1-0 up early. They were like, maybe hold this lead a little bit. But Ange is still trying to install this, you know, really attacking style of football. And, you know, I think I'd like to highlight as well, like, we're obviously 12 games into a new process, a new philosophy. And the fact that Tottenham have started this impressively under Ange is something to behold, because when you look at his other clubs, Celtic, Yokohama, the Australian sides, they all had moments where they started quite slowly, and then they had a result like the Chelsea game where they lost like 3-0. I think Celtic lost 3-0 to Leverkusen. Brisbane lost 3-0 to Melbourne. And they were like the eye-opening games where it was like, right, we need to start, you know, picking the pieces up. Whereas I feel like we've already got groundwork there. It's still just, you know, certain positions where Ange has got to tweak certain things, because I still think, like, again, in the Wolves game, we obviously did start well, took the early lead, and there was chances for us to go ahead even more. Same with Chelsea. You know, if Son was narrowly onside, we could have been 2-0 up. But there is still, as I say, a process. The players are still learning. The team is still, like, you know, all over the place at the moment with players who are still adjusting. You know, for example, Mickey van der Ven didn't even play a minute of pre-season, so the fact he hit the ground running was impressive in itself.
Yeah.
So I'm still wanting to remain positive, and I hope the fan base do, because I've seen a lot of fans say, like, oh, is Ange being naive? Should we sit back? We sat back so much under these previous managers. I want to see attacking football, for God's sakes.
I mean, for me, like, this season was always supposed to be just a building season anyway. I don't think that anyone thought coming into the season we'd be fighting for the title or be up there. I mean, a lot of fans thought we'd be lucky just to get into the Europa League this season, never mind the Champions League. So I don't think there's any cause for worry, cause for concern. We just need to stick with it, stick with the project. Yeah, it's going to be a hard few months with the injuries that we do have, but I think the Spurs fans, well, me specifically, trust that we're on the right path, and I think we're going to be on the right path this season, regardless of the injury.